So I've been a software developer for a few years now, and I started using ChatGPT and Copilot basically as soon as they released. I was fully convinced that they were going to change how we code and that it was going to make me 10 times faster, but I've kind of started to change my opinion now. In this video, I'm going to go through with data to back up why I think this. The first problem is the growing dependence on AI. We've let AI take over the fundamentals, which is great because we get this productivity boost. But long term, we're not going to be able to do those fundamentals, and it's going to lead to tech debt and unreadable code and unmaintainable code that ends up slowing us down. The way I noticed this was a really big problem was when I turned off Copilot. I realized I had the Copilot pause. If you don't know what this is, if you use Copilot, go turn it off and start writing code. You'll realize that you'll probably wait a second or two when you enter a new line, waiting for Copilot to give you it, rather than prompting Copilot for what you need. It's in the name that Copilot is meant to be the co-pilot of your code, but it's driving for most people. There was a study done called Coding on Copilot, and they took some data from the results of Copilot and what it had on engineers. And some of it was really good, don't get me wrong, but there was a lot of really bad in there too. There was a 30% increase in copy pasting code, just showing that the engineers were not engaged in the task that they're doing. One of the crazy stats was that they found churn, which they define as code which is pushed and then reverted, removed, or updated in just 2 weeks, was up almost 40%. The reason for that is that you've probably asked ChatGPT or Copilot for code, and you need a small tweak after you ask it for it, and it changes the entire thing. And so we see these huge PRs in GitHub that end up changing mass amounts of code, and every engineer's done a pull request review. And the bigger it is, the less likely you are to examine every single line and probably accepting some sort of tech debt in there. In the end, it's just going to take longer to debug and to understand because no one fully gets it right now. We might get frustrated that a task is taking too long and we let Copilot write some crazy line that doesn't make sense to anyone, but it works. And so we accept it. But the maintainability of that long term is just not there. They're not just writing code, but they're writing complexity into our systems. One theory that I've heard that, yes, it is just a theory, but it's the snowball effect of AI writing poor code and then training itself. So if you understand how AI works, especially like Copilot, it was trained mostly off of GitHub repositories that already existed. So these engineers wrote code over multiple years, and that code has changed with best practices. There's been new languages, whatever the situation might be. And all of that led up to these LLMs being trained, and they can do what they're able to now. But the amount of code that we're writing, and it's even in multiple studies, some saying as it's a good thing, that the lines of code is increasing by as much as like 20%. And sure, it doesn't impact readability, so they say, but that leaves more room for error from the LLMs. And as it's writing more code, the engineers are writing less of that code, and now the AI is training itself. So hopefully the code that's coming out is good, but if it keeps producing this code that is the same as what it was in the past, we're never going to evolve or grow in any way. And the worst thing would be if some sort of bug gets introduced and it's now trained on that and it continually trains on that and implements it more and more and it just kind of cycles into this snowball. Long term, as AI continues generating this code, developers are just going to spend more time cleaning up its mess. It might not be right now and you might move faster, but at some point you're going to have to deal with that because things change and requirements change, and you're going to need to understand what that AI wrote for you. This suboptimal code is going to become normalized and increasing tech debt and just complicating maintenance. Speaking from a personal side, if you're new to the industry and or if you even have just a few years of experience, I'd be really hesitant to using this all the time. Sure, you can turn it on if you have a long coding session that you have to crank out a lot of code and meet a deadline. But if you're doing your personal project, there's no reason to be using it. Go learn the fundamentals and understand them well, because that's only going to propagate to all other aspects. It's going to help you understand the code better when the AI is writing it. It's going to help you interview better. It's going to help you do whiteboards. And it's just going to lead to higher quality code. It's going to be easier for your team to maintain and remove the stress in the times that you spend a whole day debugging something that nobody knows where it came from, or you go look at the center of your file and it's been completely rewritten from scratch and nobody knows why or for what reason. These tools are more than likely going to get better over time, and I understand they're probably going to have a place in our future. But the people that understand the fundamentals really deeply are going to be the ones that can excel with it, not the guys that can prompt it to write a whole application from scratch and then have no idea how to make changes with it. Most people get into this career because it's a hobby and it's fun for them. Sure, there's benefits like making good money, but you probably end up coding in your free time too if you're watching this video. So while you're doing that, just don't let AI do it for you. Sure, it's fun to explore the tools, but turn them off every once in a while so you don't have the Copilot pause, please. If you guys enjoyed this video, hit the subscribe button to let me know. Thanks for watching.